The airport terminal buzzed with the usual energy of travelers dragging suitcases, sipping coffee, and scrolling through their phones. At Gate 14, boarding for Flight 782 had just begun. A well-dressed man in his early 40s, wearing a tailored navy suit and polished shoes, walked toward the counter with calm confidence. His name was Michael Carter, a CEO of a rapidly growing tech firm and a man used to first-class treatment, both literally and figuratively. Clutching his sleek leather briefcase and boarding pass, he approached the gate agent with a polite smile. "Good evening," Michael said warmly, handing over his ticket. The gate agent, a woman in her 30s with a strained expression, glanced at the ticket, then at him. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Sir, are you sure this is correct?" she asked, her tone sharp and skeptical. Michael raised an eyebrow. "Yes, that's my confirmed first-class seat," he replied calmly, resisting the urge to sound offended. She scanned the ticket again and frowned. "We'll need to verify this further. Please step aside for now," she said curtly, motioning to the side without explanation. Behind him, passengers with economy tickets were gliding through the gate without issue. Michael hesitated, his chest tightening as whispers began among onlookers. He had flown countless times, but this was different. He felt the weight of every stare, every silent judgment. He took a deep breath and stepped aside, his composure masking the sting of humiliation. The gate agent avoided eye contact, pretending to be busy while others passed freely. Minutes ticked by. 10, 15. He checked his watch as boarding neared completion. The first-class cabin he paid for, reserved well in advance, was now filling up. Still no update. Michael walked back to the desk. "Is there a problem?" he asked, his voice firm but steady. The agent shrugged. "Just a security check, sir." "Please wait." "Security check? For what?" Michael felt his jaw tighten. He wasn't angry, yet. But he knew what this was. His appearance, his skin color, it was written in the hesitation, the tone, the unnecessary scrutiny. He said nothing more. Instead, he stepped back, opened his phone, and began typing. If they thought this would end quietly, they were wrong. This wasn't just a boarding dispute anymore. It was the beginning of a storm. Michael walked away from the gate and settled into a quiet corner of the terminal, his expression calm but his mind racing. The sting of humiliation still lingered. He replayed the gate agent's words in his head. "Are you sure this is correct?" As if he didn't belong in first class, as if his presence there was an anomaly. For a brief moment, anger threatened to rise, but years of leadership had taught him that power is most effective when exercised with precision, not emotion. He placed his leather briefcase on the table and opened his phone. First, he checked his reservation details again, just to remove any shadow of doubt. Everything was correct. Seat 2A, confirmed, first class, fully paid. He scrolled down to the airline's confirmation email, then took a screenshot. Evidence mattered. If they wanted a problem, they had just created one. Next, Michael composed a new email, but this one wasn't to customer service, it was to people who could move mountains. The subject line was short and sharp. Urgent, incident at Gate 14, immediate attention required. He began typing with steady fingers, describing the events exactly as they happened. The dismissive tone, the prolonged wait, the lack of justification for the delay. His words were professional, measured, yet heavy with consequence. This wasn't a rant. This was a formal report from a CEO who happened to be a major partner in the airline's technology operations. Then, the final blow. He attached the screenshots and hit send, not just to the airline's executive team, but also to two influential board members he personally knew. Within seconds, the email traveled through corporate channels, and the clock began ticking. Michael leaned back in his chair and exhaled slowly, sipping the coffee he had ordered earlier. Around him, the terminal hummed with oblivious travelers rushing to their destinations. He, however, was in no rush. He had just shifted the entire dynamic without raising his voice or causing a public scene. On the departure screen above, Flight 782's status remained, boarding. For now, Michael checked his watch. It had been 30 minutes since the incident began. Somewhere in the airline's headquarters, alarms were going off, and he knew it. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. On board Flight 782, the last few passengers were settling into their seats. Flight attendants moved swiftly through the aisle, offering assistance and checking overhead bins. The captain was preparing for pushback when his headset crackled with an unexpected call from operations. "Captain, stand by, we have a situation," came the voice, tense and clipped. The captain frowned. "What kind of situation?" "A VIP issue. Do not close the doors." "Repeat, do not close the doors." The captain glanced toward the gate. Passengers were seated, the cabin secure, and yet he was now told to hold. He nodded, signaling the lead flight attendant. "Keep the doors open. We've got instructions from upstairs." Meanwhile, at the gate, chaos erupted. The same gate agent who had dismissed Michael earlier now looked pale as a supervisor marched toward her, phone in hand, voice low but furious. "Do you have any idea who that man is?" The supervisor hissed. "That's Michael Carter, the Michael Carter, CEO of Tech Core Solutions. They handle half our digital infrastructure." The gate agent stammered, color draining from her face. I didn't know." "Clearly," the supervisor snapped. "Corporate just called. Executive VP is demanding an immediate resolution. The flight does not leave without him in first class." Passengers nearby watched with curiosity as the tension grew. Phones were buzzing, employees scrambling. Every minute that passed meant delays, and delays meant money lost. Senior managers were now on group calls, demanding updates every second. The simple act of questioning one passenger's legitimacy had spiraled into a full-scale operational nightmare. Back in the lounge, Michael sat calmly, scrolling through emails on his phone. He wasn't smiling, but there was a quiet satisfaction in knowing his message had been received loud and clear. He had played this game before. Power wasn't loud, it was precise. And right now, his precision had sent the airline into controlled panic. 15 more minutes passed. The departure board flickered. Flight 782 delayed. The murmurs among passengers grew louder as the reason remained unknown. Flight attendants exchanged nervous glances while the captain waited for the green light he still didn't have. At gate 14, the supervisor finally made the call. "Get him. Bring him to the aircraft. And apologize like your job depends on it, because it does." The storm had reached the cockpit. But for Michael, the real turbulence was yet to come. For the airline, the supervisor practically sprinted across the terminal, scanning the seating area until he spotted Michael, composed as ever, seated with a cup of coffee and his phone. His calm demeanor was in stark contrast to the panic swirling in the airline's internal channels. Taking a deep breath, the supervisor approached, forcing a polite smile. "Mr. Carter," he began, voice slightly breathless, "we are so sorry for the inconvenience. There's been a misunderstanding. Your seat is ready, and we'd like to personally escort you on board." Michael looked up slowly, locking eyes with the man. For a brief moment, he let the silence linger, long enough to make the supervisor sweat. Then, with a subtle nod, he rose from his seat, slipping his phone into his jacket pocket. "Let's go," he said simply. As they walked toward the gate, the flustered gate agent stood stiffly behind the counter, face pale and lips tight. She avoided Michael's gaze entirely, but her hands trembled as she scanned his boarding pass. "Enjoy your flight, sir," she murmured. He gave no response, only a measured glance before stepping down the jet bridge. Inside the aircraft, whispers rippled through the cabin. Delayed passengers craned their necks, curious about the reason for the holdup. The lead flight attendant greeted Michael with exaggerated warmth, her voice dripping with apologies. "Mr. Carter, we're so sorry for the delay. Please, let us make this as comfortable as possible." Michael offered a curt smile but said nothing. Actions had already spoken louder than words. He slid into seat 2A, the seat he had paid for and been denied 30 minutes earlier. A chilled glass of champagne appeared almost instantly, accompanied by an offer for "anything else you need, sir." Meanwhile, the intercom crackled with the captain's voice. "Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the delay. We'll be departing shortly." The tone was calm, but behind the scenes, every crew member knew they had just skirted a corporate disaster, at least for now. As Michael settled in, he gazed out the window, watching the ground crew hustle. He wasn't angry anymore, he was focused. This wasn't just about a seat. It was about principle, and the price an airline would pay for underestimating him. The engines roared to life, but Michael knew the real turbulence for the airline wasn't in the skies. It was coming from the boardrooms. Flight 782 finally took off 45 minutes behind schedule, but for the airline, the real delay was only beginning. Michael sat in silence throughout the journey, occasionally replying to emails, while the staff hovered nervously around him. Every smile, every offer of champagne, every apology, it all felt desperate, and it was. He didn't need to raise his voice to make an impact. The wheels of consequence were already in motion. By the time the plane landed, Michael's inbox was flooded. Senior executives from the airline had sent multiple apology emails, each one more urgent than the last. "We value your partnership," one read. Another promised an internal review and immediate corrective measures. Michael didn't respond. Not yet. He stepped off the plane with the same quiet confidence he had carried throughout the ordeal, but his next move wasn't about personal vindication. It was about accountability. Before leaving the airport, he posted a concise message on LinkedIn. "Denied my confirmed first-class seat today. Not because of an error, but because of assumptions. 45 minutes later, they realized who I was. It shouldn't take power or status to receive basic respect. Change must start here." Attached were two photos. One of his boarding pass and another of the empty first-class cabin he was kept from boarding for over half an hour. Within an hour, the post exploded. Thousands of shares, hundreds of comments, and a trending hashtag #FlyFair. The backlash was immediate. News outlets picked up the story. "Airline faces discrimination allegations after CEO incident," headlines blared. Influencers weighed in, customers threatened boycotts, and corporate watchdogs demanded investigations. On Twitter, the airline scrambled with a public apology, but it only fanned the flames. Behind closed doors, the boardroom was in crisis mode. Their reputation was hemorrhaging, stock prices dipped by midday, and legal advisors discussed possible lawsuits. The CEO of the airline called Michael personally, voice thick with regret. But Michael's response was calm and chilling. "We'll review our business relationship soon." For Michael, justice wasn't about free flights or compensation. It was about sending a message that bias has a cost. And for the airline, that cost wasn't measured in dollars alone. It was in trust, reputation, and credibility, things money couldn't easily buy back. The incident that began at Gate 14 had turned into a storm that would haunt the airline for years.